The first thing you notice about the Blackwood Hotel is the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. The second thing you notice is the whispers. Faint at first, almost like the wind, but if you listen closely, they seem to come from the walls. And if you're unlucky enough to stay in room 217, you'll find the source of those whispers, a hidden trapdoor in the closet, leading to a tunnel that doesn't end. A tunnel where people disappear, never to be seen again. This is the story of what happens when curiosity pulls you into the darkness, and the darkness doesn't let go. The Blackwood Hotel stood at the edge of a dense, ancient forest, its towering structure casting long shadows over the quiet town below. It was a place of elegance and mystery, with its grand chandeliers, velvet drapes, and polished wooden floors. But beneath its luxurious facade lay a secret so dark, so horrifying, that it claimed countless lives over the decades. A secret hidden in the closets of every room, waiting for its next victim. The rain poured relentlessly as Daniel Carter pulled into the hotel's parking lot. He was exhausted from the long drive, his shoulders stiff and his mind foggy. The storm had made the roads nearly impossible to navigate, and he was grateful to finally have a place to rest. As he stepped out his car, the wind howled through the trees, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. The hotel loomed above him, its windows dark and foreboding. Daniel grabbed his suitcase and hurried inside, the heavy oak doors creaking as he pushed them open. The lobby was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of old wood, and something else, something faintly metallic. The receptionist, a pale woman with hollow eyes, greeted him with a smile that didn't quite reach her cheeks. "Welcome to Blackwood Hotel," she said, her voice soft and monotone. "Room 217. Here's your key." Daniel took the key, its cold metal sending a shiver down his spine. He nodded his thanks and made his way to the elevator, the sound of his footsteps echoing eerily in the empty lobby. The elevator doors opened with a groan, and he stepped inside, pressing the button for the second floor. When he reached his room, Daniel unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was spacious, with a large bed, a desk, and a closet in the corner. He set his suitcase down inside, running a hand through his damp hair. Something about the room felt off. The air was too still, the silence too heavy. But he brushed it off his fatigue and began unpacking. As Daniel hung his clothes in the closet, he noticed something strange. The floor of the closet wasn't solid. There was a small, almost imperceptible gap between the wooden planks. Curious, he knelt down and ran his fingers along the edge. To his surprise, one of the planks shifted slightly. His heart began to race as he pulled at the loose plank, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Inside, he saw a thick, rusted metal ring attached to a trapdoor. The air grew colder, and a faint, whispering sound seemed to emanate from below. Daniel hesitated, his instinct screaming at him to stop. But his curiosity got the better of him. He gripped the ring and pulled, the trapdoor creaking open to reveal a dark, gaping hole. A ladder led down into the abyss, the bottom invisible in the inky blackness. The whispering grew louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to beckon him forward. "What the hell?" Daniel muttered, his breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. He grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it down into the tunnel. The beam of light barely penetrated the darkness, but he could see that the tunnel was narrow, its walls lined with damp, moss-covered stones. Against his better judgment, Daniel began to climb down the ladder. The rungs were cold and slippery, and the air grew thicker with each step. The whispering voices grew louder, their words indistinct but filled with an undeniable sense of urgency. When he reached the bottom, he found himself in a narrow tunnel that stretched endlessly in both directions. The walls seemed to pulse faintly as if alive, and the air was filled with a faint, acrid smell that made his stomach churn. He shone his light down the tunnel, but the beam was swallowed by the darkness after only a few feet. "Hello," Daniel called out, his voice trembling. The whispering stopped abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence. Then, from somewhere deep within the tunnel, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold, a low, guttural growl, followed by the unmistakable sound of something moving toward him. Panic surged through him, and he turned to climb back up the ladder. But as he reached the first rung, the trapdoor above him slammed shut with deafening crash. He was trapped. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he presses back against the cold stone wall, his phone's flashlight flickering weakly. The growling grew louder and closer, and he could hear the sound of claws scraping against the stone floor. His mind raced, trying to think of a way out, but the tunnel offered no escape. Suddenly, the flashlight died, plunging him into complete darkness. The growling stopped, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, he felt it. A hot, rancid breath on his face, and the sensation of something brushing against his arm. He screamed, lashing out blindly, but his hand met only empty air. The whispers returned, louder now, more insistent. They seemed to come from all around him, their words finally becoming clear. "Join us, stay with us." Daniel stumbled forward, his hands groping the walls as he tried to find a way out. But the tunnel seemed to twist and turn endlessly, leading him deeper into the darkness. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, and he realized with growing horror that they were coming from the walls themselves. Hours, or maybe minutes, later, Daniel collapsed to the ground, his strength gone. The whispers surrounded him, their voices merging into a single, deafening roar. He closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face, as the thing in the darkness closed in. Back in the hotel, the receptionist sat at her desk, her hollow eyes fixed on the CCTV monitor. The screen showed Daniel's room, empty and undisturbed. There was no sign of him, no sign of the tunnel. Just an ordinary hotel room, waiting for its next guest. The receptionist smiled, her lips curling into a grotesque grin. "Room 217 is ready," she whispered, her voice echoing in the empty lobby. And somewhere deep beneath the Blackwood Hotel, the whispers continued, their voices joined by one more. The next morning, the sun rose over Blackwood Hotel, but its light did not reach the dark corners of the building. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and clean, but inside the hotel, the air was still heavy and cold. In room 217, the bed was neatly made and the closet door was closed. There was no sign of Daniel Carter. His suitcase sat, untouched by the desk, and his car remained parked outside. But Daniel was gone. Downstairs, the receptionist sat at her desk, her pale hands folded neatly in front of her. Her hollow eyes stared at the clock on the wall, ticking away the seconds. She knew what had happened, just as she had known every time before. But she said nothing. She simply waited. Later that day, a new guest arrived at the Blackwood Hotel. Her name was Emily, and she was a young woman with bright eyes and a cheerful smile. She had come to the hotel for a weekend getaway, hoping to relax and escape the stress of her busy life. The receptionist greeted her with the same hollow smile. "Welcome to the Blackwood Hotel," she said, handing Emily a key. "Room 217. I hope you enjoy your stay." Emily thanked her and made her way to the elevator, humming a tune under her breath. She didn't notice the way the receptionist's eyes followed her, with a faint whispering that seemed to echo in the empty lobby. When Emily entered room 217, she was pleased with what she saw. The room was spacious and clean, with a large bed and a beautiful view of the forest. She set her bag down and began to unpack, hanging her clothes in the closet. As she reached for a hanger, she noticed something strange. The floor of the closet looked uneven, as if one of the planks was loose. Curious, she knelt down and ran her fingers along the edge. The plank shifted slightly, and she felt a cold draft coming from beneath it. "What's this?" Emily muttered to herself. She pulled at the loose plank, revealing the same hidden compartment Daniel had found. Her eyes widened as she saw the rusted metal ring and the trapdoor beneath it. Emily hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she should leave it alone, but her curiosity was too strong. She gripped the metal ring and pulled, the trapdoor creaking open to reveal the dark, gaping hole below. The whispering started immediately, faint and indistinct at first, but growing louder as she stared into the darkness. The voices seemed to call to her, urging her to climb down the ladder and explore the tunnel. "No way," Emily said, shaking her head. She quickly closed the trapdoor and replaced the loose plank. "This is too creepy." But as she stood up, the whispering didn't stop. It seemed to come from all around her, filling the room with an eerie, unsettling sound. Emily's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone and called the front desk. "Hello?" she said when the receptionist answered. "There's something wrong with my room. I think I don't know, something in the closet. Can someone come take a look?" There was a long pause before the receptionist replied, her voice calm and emotionless. "Of course, Mississippi. I'll send someone right away." A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Emily opened it to find a tall, thin man standing in the hallway. He wore a uniform with the hotel's logo on it, and his face was pale and expressionless. "I'm here to check the closet," he said, his voice flat and monotone. Emily stepped aside, letting him into the room. The maintenance man walked straight to the closet and knelt down, pulling open the trapdoor as if he already knew it was there. Emily watched nervously as he peered into the hole, his face unreadable. "It's just an old storage space," he said after a moment, closing the trapdoor and standing up. "Nothing to worry about." "But the voices," Emily began, her voice trembling. The maintenance man turned to her, his eyes cold and empty. "There are no voices," he said. "You must be hearing things. The storm last night probably rattled your nerves." Emily wanted to argue, but the man's expression silenced her. He gave her a curt nod and left the room, closing the door behind him. That night, Emily lay in bed, unable to sleep. The whispering had stopped, but the room still felt wrong. The air was too cold, the silence too heavy. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with thoughts of the trapdoor and the tunnel beneath it. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She got out of bed and turned on the light, her eyes darting to the closet. The door was slightly ajar, and she could have sworn she hadn't left it that way. Her heart pounding, Emily walked to the closet and opened the door. The loose plank was still in place, but as she stared at it, she heard the whispering again. This time, it was louder, more insistent. "Join us, stay with us." Emily's breath came in short, panic gasps as she backed away from the closet. She wanted to run, to leave the room and never come back, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. The whispering grew louder, filling her ears until she couldn't think, couldn't breathe. And then, the trapdoor opened on its own. Emily screamed as a cold, bony hand reached out from the hole, grabbing her ankle and pulling her toward the edge. She clawed at the floor, trying to hold on, but the hand was too strong. With a final desperate cry, she was dragged into the darkness. The trapdoor slammed shut behind her, and the room fell silent once more. Downstairs, the receptionist sat at her desk, her hollow eyes fixed on the CCTV monitor. The screen showed room 217 empty and undisturbed. There was no sign of Emily, no sign of the trapdoor, just an ordinary hotel room, waiting for its next guest. The receptionist smiled, her lips curling into a grotesque grin. "Room 217 is ready," she whispered, her voice echoing in the empty lobby. And somewhere deep beneath the Blackwood Hotel, the whispers continued, their voices joined by two more. The next morning, the sun rose again over the Blackwood Hotel. Birds chirped in the trees and the forest looked peaceful and quiet. But inside the hotel, something was very wrong. Emily's car was still parked outside, and her bag was still in room 217. But Emily was gone, just like Daniel. She had disappeared without a trace. A few hours later, a police officer arrived at the hotel. His name was Officer Harris, and he had come to investigate Emily's disappearance. He was a tall man with a kind face, but his eyes were sharp and serious. The receptionist greeted him with her usual hollow smile. "Good morning, officer. How can I help you?" "I'm here about Emily Carter," Officer Harris said. "Her family reported her missing. She was staying here last night, but she never checked out. Do you know anything about this?" The receptionist shook her head slowly. "I'm sorry, officer. I didn't see her leave. But sometimes guests leave early without telling us." Officer Harris frowned. "Can I see her room?" "Of course," the receptionist said, handing him a key. "Room 217. Officer Harris made his way to room 217, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. When he entered the room, he immediately noticed something strange. The air was cold, much colder than it should have been, and there was a faint, unpleasant smell like something rotten. He began to search the room, looking for any clues. He checked the bed, the desk, and the bathroom, but everything seemed normal. Then he noticed the closet. The closet door was slightly open, and as he approached it, he felt a chill run down his spine. He opened the door and looked inside. The floor looked uneven, and one of the planks was loose. Officer Harris knelt down and pulled at the loose plank. It came away easily, revealing the hidden compartment and the trapdoor beneath it. His heart began to race as he saw the rusted metal ring. "What the?" he muttered, pulling open the trapdoor. The whispering started immediately, faint and eerie, coming from the darkness below. Officer Harris shone his flashlight into the hole, revealing the ladder and the narrow tunnel below. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, and he felt a strange pull, as if the tunnel was calling to him. He knew he should call for backup, but something inside him urged him to go down. He gripped the ladder and began to climb down, his flashlight illuminating the damp, moss-covered walls. When he reached the bottom, he found himself in the same narrow tunnel Daniel and Emily had seen. The air was thick and cold, and the whispering voices surrounded him, their words indistinct but filled with urgency. "Hello," Officer Harris called out, his voice trembling. "Is anyone here?" There was no answer, only the whispering. He began to walk down the tunnel, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive, and the air grew colder with every step. Chapter 16, The Shadows. As Officer Harris walked deeper into the tunnel, he began to see shapes moving in the shadows. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then he realized they were real, dark, shadowy figures creeping along the walls and floor. His heart pounded in his chest as the figures drew closer, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. He tried to run, but the tunnel seemed to twist and turn, leading him in circles. The whispering grew louder, more frantic, and he realized with growing horror that the voices were coming from the shadows themselves. "Join us, stay with us." Officer Harris turned and ran, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly as he stumbled through the tunnel. But no matter how fast he ran, the shadows were always right behind him, their cold breath on his neck. Finally, Officer Harris saw a light ahead. He ran toward it, his heart pounding with hope. But as he reached the end of the tunnel, he realized it wasn't an exit. It was a large, circular room, its walls lined with strange symbols and carvings. In the center of the room stood a tall, dark figure. Its face was hidden in shadow, but its eyes glowed with a cold, malevolent light. The whispering stopped, and the room fell silent. "Who are you?" Officer Harris demanded, his voice shaking. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised a hand, and the shadows around the room began to move, closing in on Officer Harris. He tried to fight, but the shadows were too strong. They wrapped around him, pulling him to the ground. The last thing he saw was the figure's glowing eyes, staring down at him with a cold, empty gaze. Back in the hotel, the receptionist sat at her desk, her hollow eyes fixed on the CCTV monitor. The screen showed room 217, empty and undisturbed. There was no sign of Officer Harris, no sign of the trapdoor, just an ordinary hotel room, waiting for its next guest. The receptionist smiled, her lips curling into a grotesque grin. "Room 217 is ready," she whispered, her voice echoing in the empty lobby. And somewhere deep beneath the Blackwood Hotel, the whispers continued, their voices joined by three more. A few days later, a family arrived at the Blackwood Hotel. There was a mom, a dad, and their little girl named Lily. Lily was only 5 years old, with curly hair and a big smile. She was excited to stay in a hotel because she had never stayed in one before. The receptionist greeted them with her usual hollow smile. "Welcome to the Blackwood Hotel," she said, handing the dad a key. "Room 217. I hope you enjoy your stay." The family thanked her and went to their room. Lily skipped ahead, her little shoes tapping on the wooden floor. When they entered room 217, Lily ran to the bed and jumped on it, giggling. "This is fun," she said, bouncing up and down. Her parents laughed and began unpacking. But as they settled in, the mom noticed something strange. The room felt cold, even though the heater was on, and there was a faint, unpleasant smell like something old and damp. Later that night, Lily was playing hide-and-seek with her dad. She ran to the closet and hid inside, covering her mouth to keep from giggling. But as she sat in the dark, she noticed something strange. The floor of the closet felt uneven, and one of the planks was loose. Curious, Lily pulled at the loose plank. It came away easily, revealing the hidden compartment and the trapdoor beneath it. Her eyes widened as she saw the rusted metal ring. "Daddy, Mommy, look what I found," Lily called out. Her parents rushed to the closet and saw the trapdoor. The dad knelt down and pulled it open, revealing the dark, gaping hole below. The whispering started immediately, faint and eerie, coming from the darkness. "What is this?" the mom asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," the dad said, shining his phone's flashlight into the hole. "But we need to call the police." The police arrived quickly, led by a detective named Sarah. She was a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and a serious expression. When she saw the trapdoor, she immediately called for backup. "This is strange," Detective Sarah said, shining her flashlight into the hole. "We need to check this out." She and two other officers climbed down the ladder, leaving Lily and her parents in the room. The whispering grew louder as they descended, and the air grew colder with every step. When they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a narrow tunnel. The walls were damp and covered in moss, and the air was thick with the smell of rot. "Stay close," Detective Sarah said, leading the way down the tunnel. As they walked deeper into the tunnel, the shadows began to move. At first, it was just a flicker at the edge of their vision, but soon the shadows were all around them, creeping along the walls and floor. The officers drew their guns, their hands trembling. "What is this?" one of them asked, his voice shaking. "I don't know," Detective Sarah said, her eyes wide with fear. "But we need to get out of here." They turned to run, but the tunnel seemed to twist and turn, leading them in circles. The whispering grew louder, more frantic, and the shadows closed in around them. Finally, they reached a large, circular room at the end of the tunnel. The tall, dark figure stood in the center, its glowing eyes fixed on them. The whispering stopped, and the room fell silent. "Who are you?" Detective Sarah demanded, her voice shaking. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised a hand, and the shadows around the room began to move, closing in on the officers. They tried to fight, but the shadows were too strong. They wrapped around them, pulling them to the ground. The last thing Detective Sarah saw was the figure's glowing eyes, staring down at her with a cold, empty gaze. Back in room 217, Lily and her parents waited anxiously. When the police didn't return, the dad decided to call for help. But as he reached for his phone, the trapdoor slammed shut on its own. The whispering started again, louder and more insistent. Lily covered her ears, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave," the mom said, grabbing Lily's hand. "Now!" They ran out of the room and down the hallway, the whispering following them. When they reached the lobby, the receptionist was gone. The front doors were locked, and the windows were covered with thick, black curtains. "What do we do?" the dad asked, his voice panicked. "There has to be another way out," the mom said, looking around. Lily noticed a small door behind the reception desk. She tugged on her mom's hand. "Look, over there." They ran to the door and found a set of stairs leading down to the basement. The whispering grew louder as they descended, but they had no choice. They had to find a way out. In the basement, they found a door leading outside. They pushed it open and ran into the night, the cold air hitting their faces. The whispering stopped, and the hotel loomed behind them, dark and silent. The next morning, the police arrived at the hotel. They found no sign of Detective Sarah or the other officers. The trapdoor in room 217 was gone, and the closet looked completely normal. Lily and her parents told the police everything, but no one believed them. The hotel was shut down, and the forest grew thick around it, hiding it from the world. Years later, Lily grew up, but she never forgot what happened at the Blackwood Hotel. She learned an important lesson from that night. Curiosity can be dangerous, and some secrets are better left undiscovered. The Blackwood Hotel still stands, hidden in the forest, waiting for its next guests. And somewhere deep beneath it, the whispers continue, their voices joined by many more. You may have escaped, but room 217's trapdoor never closes for long. Who will be its next guest? Will it be you? Subscribe now to uncover the next cursed location, where the walls bleed at midnight and reflections don't blink back. Smash that like button if you dared watch till the end. Skull, share this video with someone who won't sleep tonight. Sweet dreams if you can.